Hey there everybody, it's Nathan Cole with nathancolephoto.com, and in this tutorial I want to run through a very complex example of using the flash ambient blend technique with window pulls for a very large space in a luxury home. Now a couple weeks ago I got a lot of requests about a Lake Sherwood home that I had shot, and I want to be able to go through. There was requests on, hey, could you show us that from start to finish? So I'm going to just take one, which was the money shot. It's this particular shot here, showing this very large open space living area. So I'm going to use that as the example and go through what it took to do the lighting, my thought process behind it, what it took to do the flash ambient blending, and also the complex window pulls. Now you might remember from my last video, I showed how to do the window pulls for real estate photography with the repair layer, which we're going to use in this case as well. But the lighting gets real tricky in this also. It's a very large area. How do you do that? Now, a lot of this won't be that much different from anything that I have in books number 1 and 2. And by the way, I've got a link down in the description for this video to all the books in my real estate photography series. Here we're going to step through it. It's very similar to other videos as well that show the flash ambient technique, but with a twist. Now, bear in mind also, before getting into this, that this isn't your primary shot. It's kind of a money shot, and you might think, well, this large of a room, why shoot it very wide? Or you might also show up and think, well, I just have to go to the 4 corners and shoot everything very wide, and neither approach is what you want. It's a combination of the two. Similar like what I talk about in shot lists, is that you want to be able to break things apart. So realtors are going to expect to see the entire size of an area. It doesn't mean that you have to shoot it with a super wide angle lens, although this was a shot, the money shot that I talked about was just about 18 millimeters, but the camera was also very high on a tripod. It's not distorting anything that much, so it's a very good type of composition. They will want to see everything that's in that area. Now, with that said, I broke it apart. For instance, here's the other shots in that series. So you can see here's that main living area with those beautiful views outside, taken from a couple of different angles also, so you can kind of see that. Also the staircase close by. Here's then, you know, broken apart to see the bar area, worked my way into the kitchen. A lot of stuff to show in the kitchen, like I talk about with the common kitchen sequence and shot lists. Get as much as you can in the kitchen. And of course, circling around, we've got this little area where it had a TV. We move into then the dining room area. A couple shots we can get there, and even behind where my original shot was, going full circle, this living area. So we've got those shots as well. So that's the combination of thinking about what to shoot when you're on site. You do have to break it apart. You do want to give definition to certain areas, but you do want to show space. Remember, space sells. And when you've got something this big, and yes, it really was that big, it's gymnasium-sized living area, then you want to be able to showcase that. It's hard, and you will have to spend more time doing it, but on shoots like this, like I talk about in Business Techniques in that book, you can charge more. So when you're at luxury properties, you charge usually typically by the hour. So if you're there taking a lot of footage, you're getting paid for it, and you get the footage that's going to cut down your editing time later, so that you're getting then paid commensurate to the amount of effort that you're putting in to get this type of shot. And by the way, those other shots that I showed where I break it apart, those were actually just very typical flash ambient blended shots. Nothing really all that out of the ordinary from anything else that I show throughout the books and videos. But this big room, this big complex gymnasium style living area, that's a money shot. Realtors will want to see this. It is difficult, but I'm going to show you how to do it, and hopefully this will then shed some light, pun intended, to be able to see what you can do in various circumstances like this when you're faced with it, how to light it, how to edit it, how to shoot it, everything. Hopefully this will then cover the whole ball of wax so you can get some insight to when you're faced with this and what you can do while you're on site and also while you're editing. Want to see how this was all put together? Let's get started. So here we are looking at the footage in Lightroom. This is where it all begins. Now you can see I took a lot of shots here, and for once again money shots like this, it's worthwhile to take a lot of footage. You know, a lot of this goes fairly quick too. First thing I'm doing here, I'm taking an ambient shot. I'm at ISO 320 f7.1. You know, I love that kind of as a sweet spot for interiors, something I mentioned throughout the book's other videos as well. So I kept it at that. I do some other ambient shots so to kind of just see where I am. I didn't like this as much. This is at 1/15th of a second compared to what I did like, which was 1/13th of a second. Sometimes I started about 1/10th of a second and see where this goes, but I knew this would probably be just a little bit bright. It was very bright coming through this room. Something to get used to over time. The next thing I did, for a big room like this, I try to judge where my shutter speed should be for my flash by first taking a no flash shot, just an ambient shot, and seeing if I have a workable room. So this is good. It's still got some light coming in, some ambient, but it's not enough to really affect the white balance. So this looked pretty good. Now, you know, I talk a lot about using the two-stop rule, but that is really not going to apply for something like this where you've got such a large area with so much light. You really need to control more of this with light. Plus, it's a higher end home, very expensive. The shoot is paying worthwhile for it, so it's good to light it as best you can. There's going to be a lot of expectations from the realtor for this, so we're going to make it the best we can. So what I ended up doing anyways, long story short, was I brought my shutter speed to a sweet spot that I like to use when in doubt, which is 1/100th of a second when I'm at that ISO 320 f7.1. Then I start taking flash shots to see where I am. I'm using an Explorer 600 with an oval reflector. So the Explorer 600 is facing back and the oval reflector is behind that flashed into the room. It's something that I show in the tutorial on flash settings. And you can see there's a link over here. You can watch that tutorial if you want to learn more about the flash settings and also how I do these reflector bounces. Anyways, I play around with that, eventually then introducing a speed light into the kitchen so I can get some light shed there. Notice that there wasn't before enough light really in there to get the color that I want. So here I start introducing that. Eventually though, I up the power on the Explorer so that I can really get a lot of light through there. This is about full power on the Explorer 600 bouncing into there. Got then good color going in here. I even have enough light going into the far room, and I've got a speed light sitting on a dining room table over here, just flashing bare bulb up here just to make sure I got some extra little oomph inside there. No diffusion, just some bare bulb, and that's going to be fixed then with the ambient. But first thing I did though was then take a second shot, composite it. So I'm going to composite, I should say, where I just move the speed light over so I can edit the other one out later. Next, excuse me, I try to see where my shutter speed should be for, and also all my exposure settings for doing the window pull. So here, keeping my ISO at 320, I took the shutter speed to 1/160th of a second, which is right below the camera's sync speed that I was using. Wasn't dark enough, so I went down to 1/250th of a second, and this seemed to be good for me. Now the white balance is off on this, so I'm going to fix that in a second, just like I show using repair layers in the last tutorial on window pulls. So here, let's start with our window pulls. I'm not worried about the reflections. We're going to do the repair layer trick on this, but I do a window pull here, a window pull down here, and a window pull down on the far end. So I got 3 window pulls. Now in all 3 of these, I'm using the same technique where I am flashing the light at the window at an angle, because the goal is to overexpose that window frame to use darken mode. Now we know where our white balance is here. It's pretty much the same. If you look up here, it's about 4750 -7. Here we're at 4700 -7, and here we're at 4700 -6. But look at the white balance on our repair layer. It's 5600 +5. Those colors won't match when we go to repair. So go to this one here where we're really going to use it most. The white balance is 4700 -6. And so here I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to change him to 4700 and -6. Now, doesn't that look much better? Definitely does. Now the other frames here already have, including this one, had the original pre-processing preset that I talk about in other videos and in the book. And basically, that's just your lens correction stuff. So you get all that distortion out. Very simple stuff. But anyways, all of the images have that applied, and I've flagged the ones that we're going to use. and the ones that I picked out. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight all those. We're going to open these as layers in Photoshop. And there's a lot for this one. It's more than you usually would have. Typical Flash Ambient Blend would have two pictures. You've got your ambient frame, you've got your flash frame. Maybe three if you've got a window pull. In this case, there's a lot of stuff going on, so there's a lot of layers. So you may want to auto align your layers once they come in here. And once again, this may look like a lot of work, and it is. Once you get used to it though, it does go very quickly, but more importantly is when you're talking about a gig like this and the way that it pays and obviously the expectations that are going to be set for it, you want to make it happen. You want this to rock, so it's worthwhile to take the time to do this. So anyways, want to be able to select all these layers, auto align them. I have an action to do it. If you've never done it before, just do a select all layers. You can see how that selected all layers on the right. And then go to edit and then auto align layers. Just use auto and that'll take care of it. Even if you didn't even touch the camera, taking this many frames, something could move. Some traffic outside, I'm on a third floor, just vibrations from even if you're using a camera with a mirror in it, most DSLRs, then of course you're going to have that slapping back and forth. A lot of stuff could happen. Not much alignment problem here. I was using a pretty good steady tripod and all that. So now we'll take that ambient layer on the top, typical that we do for any other Flash Ambient Blend, turn them into luminosity mode. And you can see how now we've got that improved color. We got rid of all the casts because we're using Flash. And luminosity mode just discards the color and allows us to use the light. We're going to blend that in later, layer mask hide. Now we want to fix just this guy here with our composite. So what we want to do is we can just zoom in here and see a little closer what's going on. We've got, remember, this shot here, and then we've got another one we composited over on this side, and it's a decision of which one do you want to use to erase the other. In this case, I'm going to take this guy up on top, layer mask hide, take a brush at 100% flow, and then just paint over him. Now you can take a brush at, let's say, about a 30% flow and blend in the rest of that. Very simple. So now you got a pretty good composite. You have enough color now in this room to make this all happen. A couple other repairs here you can see because one flash was casting a little bit of light down there on the floor. So we just go ahead and fix him too. Just blend that in. Anything else you need to do from that composite, now's the time to do it. Now we're ready for the typical Flash Ambient Blend. This isn't different than doing any other Flash Ambient Blend. Take a brush at about a 30% flow, maybe 20, and just brush in that luminosity mask wherever you need to. I like to leave a little bit of glare. I love it. See above the window, a little bit over here, and also on the hardwood floor. I know some people don't like it at all. I don't like a lot, but sometimes I like a lot. And like over here, I like a lot showing that these skylights here actually are doing something. So I'm not letting the full ambient in. If I did shift click, you can see how overpowering that would be across the thing. That to me seems pretty good. I might get rid of a little bit here. And also then had a little bit too much on the counter right there, so I can erase some of that just where I need to. So anyways, that looks pretty good to me. Time for the window pulls. Typical window pulls, just like I showed in the last example. Take it up to the top, go into darken mode, layer mask hide. We can zoom in here. You can take a brush on 100% flow, take a polygon, whatever you need to do. The big thing is you can overlap. This is the beauty of using darken mode. 100% brush here, I'm overlapping all over the place. Look at it. It's painting in just fine, no problem. Same with using a polygon. So this is just your typical darken mode window pull. It's just that in this case we have three. This is the first one that we're doing, then we're going to do the other two here next. So we take the next one down here, bring it up to the top, turn it into darken mode, layer mask hide, and then we can paint in him too, or polygon, whatever you'd like to do to make that happen. Now, if you have too much here and you don't like as much, for instance, maybe that window, well, just go ahead and erase it. You can erase some of that out of there. So you've got control on how much that window pull you want to have in there. Okay, now we take our last window pull, we go up here to the top, once again, darken mode, layer mask hide, and like in this case to show the polygon technique, then I'll just draw a polygon around these windows just real quick to show you. It's the same type of thing. It's just a matter of you can overlap as much as you want, and that's just the polygon technique. Now you can see I got a little bit there, so I'll just erase. There's some shadows kind of going on there. So any way you'd like to do it, once again, I show a lot more of that in the previous video, where I also show them the technique for doing the repair on window pulls. So let's take that repair layer up to the top. Let's zoom in here to the window that we want to apply it to, and let's go then layer, mask, hide. Now, what we can do here is draw a polygon then around the window inside of it. You don't have to go to the edge. In fact, you don't want to go to the edge. Just kind of get a little close to it, like that. And then go select, modify, feather that by about 5 pixels, reverse your color so that they're black and white, and hit the delete key. Boom. Just like that, they're in there. Same thing here. You can go around here on the edge, if you'd like. Now that bottle's going to cause a bit of a problem. We'll fix that too, because you don't have to do that technique. Take your colors back to where they were, take a brush, and now just brush in some of that where you'd like. It looks like the alignment was off just a little bit in this compared to the others, but that's okay. Okay, so that's basically the window pull. If you want for the repair layer, you can do that to any of these that you'd like, but that gets rid of the reflection. So without the repair layer and then with it. Yeah, the alignment was just a tad off with that, but we're really not going to notice that when that goes in for the view. So once again then, just like any other flash ambient blend, go to a layer, flatten, save that, and now we're back into Lightroom where we can start adding bumps. So I'll start with, let's say, a light bump here. Yeah, we can maybe up the highlights, up some of the whites a little bit, make that look really good. See if our geometries, that's fine. White balance just a little bit off, and I showed in one of the videos on how to correct that, but here I'm just going to take then cool it down by just a tad, take a little bit of the reds out by bringing that down to about that much, maybe not so much blacks on the floors, and that's it. So when we're all done and said, the final product for this one looked like this. Now I realize there was a lot to soak in on that. I know I went through some of that kind of fast, but once again, a lot of that's covered in books number 1 and 2, and I've got a link to all 5 books in my real estate photography series down in the description for this video. Some take-home points from this, you've probably seen in maybe some of the other videos I have on this, or if you've got some of the books, especially out of book number 1, is that we're using that Explorer 600, a very powerful mono light for this case, because we do need to get a lot of light. Now, could you use maybe the 8200? Could you use a weaker mono light? Could you use speed lights? Possibly, you'd need quite a few. It would be kind of tough to light that big of an area. When I've got the Explorer 600 for stuff like this, I just turn that Explorer back, then I hit it with a big oval reflector, and I've got tons of diffused light. And you could have also used a bounce umbrella to do this. Remember, this is a very large area. This isn't just your typical home you walk into and you can start popping a speed light around. So that's what makes this all the more complex. Now, if those colors had been darker, it would have been more of a challenge. I would have had to bring in just other speed lights also to maybe shoot through umbrellas to get all that color. Remember, what we're really after here is to get enough color. We're not worried about necessarily filling in all the shadows and doing all that. That is important, but if we don't have the proper color throughout the entire frame, once we bring in then our ambient shot and put it into luminosity mode, then we're going to start losing that because we'll be too far into the dark part of the spectrum, something I talk about in the other videos as well. So anyways, important to light it so we get proper color throughout. The Explorer 600 helped quite a bit in that. Luckily, the kitchen had a white ceiling, so I was able to then bounce the speed light off the ceiling. If it didn't, that's where a shoot-through umbrella would have come in handy, where I'd have been at one end of the kitchen and shooting with a shoot-through umbrella, and then the same composite technique, I just go to the other side and use a shoot-through umbrella and shoot that other side like that. Sometimes too, you can angle it down so each side has the shoot-through umbrellas going down like this, kind of like a bounce would happen, and that way you can also avoid some of the harsh reflections that could come off of that. So that's an important thing. So I used typically what I call my 3 musketeers of lighting. I have my Explorer 600, I've got a speed light typically on a stand, a speed light that would be on my belt. Now one that was on my belt, I just placed him over on the dining room table, bare bulb, and let him go at it shooting off the ceiling, which also, by the way, isn't always a bad thing to do. you can get diffusion of your light by using some of your luminosity mode. If you're having to force that much light, you're not going to worry about diffusing it too much. That's going to be one of the least of your worries. But shoot-through umbrellas can help. So anyways, there was some lighting techniques in there that made it very difficult. Once again though, if it was a darker paint color, and I talked about using more light power, you might not have had to use such a high shutter speed also, because the room would have been darker overall and your ambient light wouldn't have affected it as much. You could also drop your aperture, excuse me, you could have increased the aperture a little bit by dropping your f-stop number a little bit. When you're at this large of a room, if you're shooting f8, f11, you're wasting depth of field. You just don't need it. Use a depth of field calculator, and I've got some in the end of the interiors book, and I believe also the advanced editing book, where you can see that shooting from f8 to f6.3 doesn't really change much. f7.1 is a sweet spot, but if you're really stressing whatever lights you have, then take it down to f6.3. f5.6 would really be pushing it to try to get a good depth of field all the way across. But you can see that the first in-focus thing that I'd have to worry about, which was that furniture, was still 10 feet in front of me, so I'm not that worried about that kind of depth of field. So that's another technique you could have done for something like this to help light it. Then, of course, we've got the window pulls. This is a view home, and it's selling for many millions of dollars because of that view. You want to make it pristine. So that's why, yeah, I'm doing the darken mode window pulls, and I've got reflections, and they're inevitably going to happen with a large room like this. And it'd be so much of a hassle to just keep walking up close to it, try to get just a darken mode window pull right close to the frame. I'm trying to get through this as fast as possible, so I just go boom, walk down, boom, boom, and I'm hitting them really hard. I don't care about the reflections because I'm going to use that repair layer. And once again, the repair layer isn't cutting out like you'd have to if you didn't have the darken mode. Darken mode window pull gets you everything you need around the frame, and then you can get kind of close to the frame with your repair layer using a polygon and put that in there. Other than that, it's just another typical flash ambient blend. Nothing really changes that much except for what you get to charge the customer. Jobs like this, as I talk about in the business techniques book, jobs like this are paid by the hour usually. So you spend some time on site, get as much footage as you can that you know will make your editing time shorter. So you're charging by the hour. It is expected. You're going to be taking good pictures, and the realtor knows that. Also, it isn't for every shot, and this is what's really important. I hate to keep mentioning my books, but shot lists, I talk about this a lot. You break it apart. You do get this large room, this large space, the money shot, and it can be very hard to light to get it really crisp with using lights. But you're going to break apart into other rooms, and they're going to go a lot quicker. Other areas of that large living area were smaller. They were easier to light. It was one pop with an Explorer. Now, sure enough, though, they did require some bouncing because it had that wood ceiling. There's nothing to bounce off of without getting all kinds of color cast. So I did use a lot of bounce from that. Anyways, besides that, though, it's just your typical everyday shoot. It's just that sometimes you will run across properties like this, and they will present their challenges. So I hope this example kind of gives you some guidance and some flexibility on what you could do next time you're faced with a room like this. I really hope this tutorial was useful for you and that you can use some of this in your photography as well. If you did like this video, you can subscribe to my YouTube channel. It won't cost anything, and as soon as one of these videos is posted, you'll be the first to know. Thanks a lot for watching. Until next time, take care, be safe, and get out there and shoot something.